Among the Looney Tunes stable of characters, a certain yellow canary has made quite the mark ever since he made his debut. He is most well known for his pairings with Sylvester the cat, but Tweety's been able to carve out his own identity that has made him a memorable presence among those cartoon stars. The character was created by Bob Clampett for the cartoon A Tale of Two Kitties, released in 1942, although there were some slight differences from what he would eventually evolve into. First and foremost, he was depicted as naked rather than having his trademark yellow feathers. The character's name was not identified in the cartoon, but Orson was used on the model sheets. In the short, he resides by his lonesome in his nest and deals with two cats heavily inspired by Abbott and Costello. He's also a lot more mischievous in his initial appearance, as he constantly thinks of different ways to hurt these cats, which he does with great glee. Something that would become a trademark of his was introduced in this cartoon, which is his famous line, I ta putty tat. I did, I ta putty tat, delivered by Mel Blanc, with a voice that has remained the same since his debut. A Tale of Two Kitties would eventually become one of the rare Looney Tunes cartoons to enter the public domain a few decades after it premiered, so I remember watching it frequently as a child on one of those video cassette collections of public domain cartoons. It's long stuck with me as a notable Tweety appearance, even though, like I said, he did not have that name yet. Clampett would finally name his bird Tweety in his second cartoon, Birdie and the Beast. In that short, as well as his third one, A Gruesome Twosome, we start to see a few more of his familiar traits, including Tweety's love of singing. Clampett then began to conceive of a cartoon where Tweety dealt with a black and white cat created by Friz Freleng, and storyboards were even drawn for this proposed cartoon. He would leave Warner Brothers shortly afterwards, so it was never made. Nonetheless, Freleng liked the idea of pairing them up, and did so in his cartoon Tweety Pie in 1947. Tweety was given yellow feathers, finally giving him the final touch that would help make him stand out. That cartoon proved what an excellent match they were, as Freleng and storymen Ted Pierce and Michael Matisse came up with so many inspired gags, as the cat, who would later be given the name Sylvester, tries to eat Tweety during a snowy night. Freleng seemed to take a liking to that little canary because he ended up directing almost every Tweety cartoon produced by Warner Brothers during the animation studio's golden age. While Sylvester would occasionally meet up with other characters in his cartoons, Tweety was exclusively paired up with Sylvester. Freleng would also move Tweety away from the slightly deranged personality Clampett gave him, making him more innocent and cutesy, although he did not mind seeing Sylvester pummeled at times and would frequently call him a bad old putty tat. There were also times when Tweety would do things like attach Sylvester to a firework, hit him with a slingshot, or bring out the baseball bat. Freleng hit upon a formula with those shorts, as Sylvester would attempt to eat Tweety, but something would usually get in the way. But it was a successful formula, and Freleng and his gagmen came up with a lot of fun scenarios for those two. He would also throw in a few additional characters like Hector the Bulldog. Freleng would give Tweety a permanent owner, Granny, in the 1950 cartoon Canary Row. The two would often be side by side, and while Sylvester would attempt to get Tweety, Granny was always there to knock him out with occasional help from Hector. Thus, Tweety now had two characters he would forever be linked to, and for good reason, as his trio would allow for so many inspired jokes. As Tweety sang in his cage, Granny kept watch, and Sylvester licked his lips as he plotted and schemed. Following Bob Clampett's departure and Freleng taking over the character, only twice was he used in another director's cartoon. Chuck Jones gave Tweety a cameo in the Clawed Cat Frisky Puppy cartoon No Barking, and Jerry Chinicki, a longtime animator for Freleng's animation unit at Warner Brothers, directed Sylvester and Tweety's last Golden Age cartoon, Hawaiian Ai. Following that, Tweety would show up from time to time in various projects, like the television special Bugs Bunny's Looney Christmas Tales, where he took on the role of Tiny Tim in a segment based on A Christmas Carol. I guess the character became popular enough that the Looney Tunes Saturday morning compilation show, which ran under a variety of names like The Bugs Bunny Show and The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour, changed its name to The Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show in 1986, and stayed that way until the series stopped airing on ABC in 2000. It's funny that while Daffy Duck sings the show's theme song with Bugs, it's Tweety that gets co-billing. Although I guess that's fitting for Daffy's character, that the ABC executives decided the cute little bird was more marketable. At least Daffy would eventually get his name in the title over Cartoon Network. The last time Mel Blanc would voice Tweety was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, in a scene borrowed from A Tale of Two Kitties. Like many of the other Looney Tunes appearances in that movie, it was a great way to use the character, and a worthy send-off for Blanc's tenure. When Tweety showed up on Tiny Toon Adventures, he had two separate voice actors, depending on the episode, for each playing him in multiple projects in the years since, Jeff Bergman and Bob Bergen. Of the two, Bergen is who I most associate with Tweety, but Bergman did a great job too. Tweety made a memorable appearance in the short Carrot Blanca, where he played the Peter Lorre role, and a few times he even slips into a Lorre impression. Tweety's biggest role in the 90s Looney Tunes production was the television series The Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. This continued where Friz Freleng left off in his cartoons by having the two title characters, along with Granny and Hector, living together, but with the premise they went around solving mysteries, although Tweety has to deal with both helping Granny uncover the mystery and watching out for Sylvester trying to make him into a snack. Sadly, Freleng passed away some months before the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries premiered, but recognizing his important role in developing those characters, the series was dedicated to his memory. Joe Lasky voiced both Sylvester and Tweety on the show and did an impressive job of making them sound distinct. A lot of recording sessions probably involved him switching back and forth between the voices. As I've said many times before, I think Joe Lasky is the best of the post-Mel Blanc Looney Tunes voice actors, although I've also been impressed with what Jeff Bergman and Eric Bauza have done with the characters. Lasky would also voice those two roles in Tweety's High-Flying Adventure, which took Tweety on a around-the-world in 8 days type journey. Someone you may be surprised to learn has also voiced Tweety a few times is legendary Disney animator Eric Goldberg. When he's not drawing for the mouse, he has stopped by a few times at Warner Brothers to help on a few projects there. Credited on the name Claude Rains, he animated on a few of the last Looney Tunes cartoons supervised by Chuck Jones, and in the Daffy Duck cartoon Superior Duck, he provided Tweety's voice in a cameo. And then when he served as the animation director on Looney Tunes Back in Action, he again voiced Tweety along with Marvin the Martian. The 2011 Looney Tunes show depicted an interesting history for both him and Granny. An episode of the series reveals that he and Granny were spies for the Allies during World War II. It's kind of a neat backstory, while also suggesting Tweety is a lot older than he looks, at least within the canon of the Looney Tunes show. That same year, anyone who went to see Happy Feet 2 in theaters was treated to a new computer-animated Tweety and Sylvester short, which cleverly used archival recordings of Mel Blanc singing the song I Taught Putty Tat. In the recent Looney Tunes cartoons, they combined Tweety's Clampett and Freleng personalities, which allowed for some amusing interactions with Sylvester, as he, you guessed it, tries to eat Tweety. Hey, why mess with a classic formula? Interesting enough, the animated film King Tweety does slightly tweak it, not only with the designs, but in the relationship between the two, as Tweety does show a lot of affection for Sylvester, and that cat in return tries to save his life. As I mentioned in my Sylvester character profile, I found it to be an amusing film with a decent amount of creative gags. In the past few years, Tweety's voice actor seems to bounce between Bob Bergen and Eric Bauza, depending on what the people behind that specific production is looking for. Bergen was Tweety in Wabbit, aka New Looney Tunes, Space Jam: A New Legacy, and the game Looney Tunes World of Man. Meanwhile, Bauza has recently voiced him in Looney Tunes cartoons King Tweety and Tiny Toons Looniversity. He's also reportedly the voice of Tweety in the upcoming live-action animated hybrid film Cody vs. Acme. In 2021, Warner Brothers announced a live-action animated series titled Tweety Mysteries was in the works, which would have followed that canary teaming up with a new young friend to solve mysteries together. Since the Warner Brothers Discovery merger, there have not been any updates on the series, which suggests it is not moving forward. In any case, Tweety Bird remains a lasting character within the Looney Tunes family, especially as it goes up against Sylvester and goes on adventures with Granny. That canary may look cute, but he's shown to be a lot more cunning than he appears. See you next time.